In the home of glittering chandeliers and whispered luxury, appearances mean everything. But so do assumptions. Behind the polished glass and velvet displays lies a story that will leave you questioning justice, power, and perception. What happens when a quiet morning in a boutique turns into a nightmare for one woman wrongly accused? Stay with us as this tale of prejudice and resilience unfolds, and nothing is as it seems. Welcome to our channel, where stories come alive with heart and purpose. If you love gripping tales that spark reflection and ignite conversation, you're in the right place. So hit that subscribe button, and let's keep the stories flowing. Together, we'll uncover truths and share moments that resonate with every heart. The boutique was a sanctuary of opulence. Diamond necklaces sparkled under soft spotlights, each nestled in velvet-lined cases. Handbags with hefty price tags perched delicately on pedestals, their pristine leather gleaming. The faint scent of expensive perfume mingled with the soft murmur of classical music playing in the background. Every detail screamed exclusivity. Carla Bennett walked in, her entrance unnoticed at first by the sales associates. In her black leggings, simple hoodie, and sneakers, she didn't match the usual clientele who flaunted designer outfits. But Carla had chosen her attire with purpose. She had finished her morning jog, showered, and decided to drop by the boutique out of curiosity. Confident but intentionally unassuming, Carla moved through the aisles, admiring the displays without showing too much interest. The staff didn't share her calm. A quiet hum of panic had begun to ripple among them. The necklace, an elaborate piece of diamonds and emeralds valued at tens of thousands of dollars, was missing. A sales associate whispered urgently to the manager, who immediately signaled to the security guard. The guard's eyes darted around the room, landing on Carla, the only customer dressed casually among others wrapped in luxury. Moments later, the boutique's glass doors swung open, and Officer Romain Green entered with heavy, deliberate steps. His police uniform was sharp and neatly pressed, his belt weighed down with tools of authority. His piercing gaze swept over the store and landed on Carla. She stood near an empty display case, oblivious to the commotion brewing around her. Romain's reputation preceded him. A man known for making snap judgments, he prided himself on gut instincts that were often more biased than accurate. To him, Carla's casual attire in this environment was enough reason to suspect her. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Striding over to Carla, he demanded, "Let me see your bag." Startled, Carla looked up, her dark eyes meeting his cold, assessing glare. "Excuse me?" she asked, her tone steady but laced with confusion. "What's in your bag?" Romain's voice was sharp, each word clipped. Carla straightened, her posture calm but unyielding. "What's this about?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped, his impatience flaring. "A necklace is missing, and you were standing right there." Around them, customers began to pause, their idle browsing replaced by curiosity. A few pulled out their phones, recording from a distance. Carla's jaw tightened, but she didn't raise her voice. "You can't search my bag without a reason or my permission." Romain smirked, an expression of disdain. "This is the reason." Without waiting for consent, he grabbed the bag slung over her shoulder. Carla flinched, her calm exterior cracking for a moment, but she didn't resist. The boutique fell silent as Romain rifled through the contents. Wallet, keys, a water bottle. Then his hand emerged holding a necklace wrapped in tissue paper. Gasps rippled through the room. Romain's smirk grew wider, his triumph evident. "Care to explain this?" he asked, holding up the necklace like a trophy. Carla stared at the piece of jewelry, her brow furrowed in disbelief. "That's not mine," she said quietly. "Sure, it isn't," Romain sneered. "People like you always say that." The words hung in the air like a slap. Carla's expression shifted. The initial shock melted away, replaced by a steely resolve. She looked directly at Romain, her voice measured and unwavering. "I didn't put that there. Someone else did." The room buzzed with murmurs. A woman whispered, loud enough for Carla to hear. She shouldn't have been in here dressed like that. Carla ignored the comment, her focus on Romain. This is a mistake, and when you realize it, I hope you're ready for what comes next. Romain didn't respond. He snapped cuffs onto Carla's wrists and began leading her toward the door. The customers parted silently, their expressions ranging from shock to discomfort. Carla kept her head high as she walked out, her steady demeanor unshaken even as phones captured every step. Her parting words lingered in the air like an unspoken promise. You're making a huge mistake. When they arrived at the station, Romain's confidence hardened into arrogance. He ignored Carla's composed silence, filing her demeanor away as arrogance. As she was processed, the sharp contrast between her calmness and his smugness unsettled those around them. In the corner of the station, Officer Daniels, younger and more thoughtful, watched the interaction with increasing unease. She doesn't fit the profile of a thief, he said quietly to Romain as Carla was escorted to a holding cell. Romain waved him off. You think a thief wears a sign saying, I'm guilty. People like her are all the same. Daniels bristled at the statement. You should at least check the footage from the boutique before this blows up in your face. Romain shot him a warning look. I know what I'm doing. Let it go. Carla, sitting in the holding cell, overheard the exchange. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile, though her eyes stayed sharp. When Romain finally turned toward her, she stood and met his gaze. I want my phone call, she said firmly. Romain leaned against the bars, grinning smugly. Who do you think you are? Some kind of lawyer? Carla's eyes didn't waver. Her voice was cold and precise. Exactly. Sitting in the holding cell, Carla Bennett folded her arms and watched as the clock on the far wall ticked away. Her face betrayed no emotion, but her mind was a storm of thoughts. She didn't waste time feeling sorry for herself. Instead, she was strategizing. Finally, when the officer returned, she stood with a quiet authority and said, I'm ready for my phone call. Minutes later, Carla dialed the number she knew by heart. The phone barely rang once before a crisp voice answered. Angela Cruz speaking. Angela, it's me, Carla said, her voice steady. I'm at the station. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. What happened? Angela asked, her tone cool but laced with fire beneath. I'll explain when you get here. Bring the cavalry, Carla said before hanging up. Half an hour later, Angela Cruz stormed into the station. The sound of her red heels against the linoleum floor echoed through the room. Angela was a vision of authority, her tailored black suit perfectly accentuating her sharp features. In one hand, she carried a stack of documents, and in the other, her phone, which she had been using to pull up case law on her way in. Her entrance caught everyone's attention. Even Romain glanced up, his smug demeanor faltering slightly as Angela strode directly toward him. Officer Green, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm Angela Cruz, defense attorney. Carla Bennett is my client. I want to see her immediately. Romain raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair with mock nonchalance. And you are? Angela placed her stack of papers on his desk with a thud. I'm the person who's about to make your life very difficult if you don't start following protocol. Behind the bars of her cell, Carla smirked faintly as she overheard the exchange. Moments later, Angela stood before her, the two women sharing a look that needed no words. Once Carla was brought to the interrogation room, Angela wasted no time. First, let's get something clear, she began, directing her attention back to Romain, who had followed them in. Do you have any evidence to hold my client beyond a baseless accusation? Romain's smirk returned. We found the necklace in her bag. That's evidence enough. Angela's lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. Then you won't mind if I request the boutique's security footage. That's not necessary, Romain replied, shifting uncomfortably. It is if you want to avoid a lawsuit, Angela said smoothly, her eyes narrowing. After several tense moments, Romain grudgingly made the call. When the footage arrived, Angela gestured for it to be played. The room was silent as the video showed Carla browsing handbags, unaware of the sales associate lingering nearby. Then came the moment of truth, the associate subtly slipping the necklace into Carla's open bag before walking away. Romaine's face drained of color. Angela crossed her arms. "Shall we continue this farce, or will you release my client now?" Once the cuffs were removed and Carla's belongings returned, she didn't leave. Instead, she requested a private conversation with Romaine. Angela, though reluctant, allowed it. The tension in the room was palpable as Carla sat across from the officer who had humiliated her. "Do you know what you did today?" Carla asked, her tone calm but razor-sharp. She didn't wait for him to respond. "You saw me and decided I didn't belong. You didn't ask questions. You didn't check the facts. You just acted." Romaine looked away, but Carla's voice pulled his gaze back. "This isn't just about me," she continued. "It's about every person who walks into a place like that and gets judged before they speak. You think your assumptions make you good at your job, but they make you dangerous." He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I'm not done. You've already made a mistake that will cost you, but not in the way you think. This is bigger than me. And now you're part of a story you can't control." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "You're about to learn what justice really means." Romaine didn't reply. He couldn't. For the first time, his arrogance cracked, and the weight of what he had done began to settle in. As Carla walked out, Angela joined her, her voice low. "That was a risk, and it is not over." The fallout was swift and relentless. The boutique's polished veneer of luxury shattered overnight when the security footage and customer recordings hit social media. The video of Carla Bennett standing calmly in handcuffs while Officer Romaine Green rifled through her belongings spread like wildfire. The footage of the necklace being slipped into her bag by a store associate confirmed what many viewers already suspected: racial profiling. Headlines screamed across news outlets and social media. "State prosecutor falsely arrested in racial profiling incident," and "luxury boutique under fire for discrimination." Carla's composed demeanor in the face of humiliation only magnified the outrage. Her story resonated, especially among those who had experienced similar injustices but lacked her platform to fight back. The boutique was hit hard. Customers began sharing their own stories of mistreatment, many recounting how they had been followed, questioned, or falsely accused simply because they didn't look the part. Carla's legal team uncovered damning evidence, a pattern of profiling incidents buried in the boutique's internal reports. Emails between management and staff revealed directives to keep a close eye on certain customers based on race, attire, or perceived socioeconomic status. In a press statement, the boutique's management tried to deflect blame, calling the incident an isolated misunderstanding. But their excuse crumbled under the weight of evidence Carla had unearthed. Public protests erupted outside their flagship store, demanding accountability and a complete overhaul of their discriminatory practices. Carla wasn't finished. She filed a dual lawsuit against the boutique and the police department. Her demands were clear: accountability and systemic reform. Romaine's downfall was just as public as Carla's vindication. Stripped of his badge and placed under investigation, he faced intense scrutiny from both his department and the public. His colleagues shunned him, unwilling to be associated with his actions. The smug arrogance that had once defined him dissolved as he was forced to confront the biases that had led to his reckless decisions. In his solitude, Romaine began reflecting on his actions. He started reading about systemic racism, attending workshops on unconscious bias, and quietly trying to understand the harm he had caused. But no amount of self-reflection could undo the damage done to his career and reputation. The final twist came during a courtroom hearing. As Carla stood before the judge, she revealed something that sent shockwaves through the room. Her wrongful arrest hadn't been a random incident. She had been investigating the boutique for months, gathering evidence of their discriminatory practices. Her arrest was the last piece of the puzzle, proof that even someone with her credentials wasn't immune to their policies. After the hearing, Carla approached Romain, who sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, his once commanding presence reduced to a shadow of itself. She handed him a thick file. "You'll want to read this," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "It's what I've been building a case against, and now you're a part of it." As she walked away, Romain opened the file, his face pale as he flipped through its pages. Each piece of evidence was a mirror, forcing him to confront the systemic failures he had upheld. It wasn't just about Carla anymore. It was about every person who had been silenced, overlooked, or profiled. Carla's victory was more than personal. It was a catalyst for change. The boutique was forced to implement sweeping reforms, including anti-discrimination training for all employees. The police department faced a similar reckoning, with new protocols introduced to address bias in law enforcement. Carla had turned her humiliation into a powerful movement for justice, ensuring that others wouldn't face what she had endured. And as Romain sat with the file in his hands, he realized that justice, though painful, was necessary for him and for everyone. Meanwhile, Romain Green was grappling with the weight of his mistakes. Stripped of his badge and ostracized by his peers, he had been forced to confront the deeply ingrained biases that had shaped his decisions. It wasn't easy. At first, he resisted, clinging to excuses and justifications. But as the public backlash intensified and he was left to face himself, Romain took a step he never imagined. He enrolled in diversity and equity workshops. The workshops were uncomfortable, peeling back layers of ignorance he hadn't even realized he carried. He listened to stories of those who had been marginalized and harmed by systems he had upheld. Slowly, understanding began to replace defensiveness. Romain knew he couldn't undo the harm he had caused Carla or countless others, but he committed to doing better. One evening, he sat at his kitchen table, pen in hand, struggling to find the words. Finally, he wrote Carla a heartfelt letter of apology. "Carla, I know no words can undo the damage I caused, but I want to acknowledge my actions and their impact. I failed you, not just as a police officer, but as a person. I allowed my biases to dictate my decisions, and for that, I am deeply sorry. I'm taking steps to change, not because I expect forgiveness, but because it's the right thing to do. Your composure, even in the face of injustice, taught me more than any training ever could. Thank you for holding me accountable. Sincerely, Romain Green." When Carla received the letter, she read it carefully. While she appreciated the effort, her response was measured. "Forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility," she said when asked about it later. "But acknowledgement is the first step toward change." Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stories like this remind us of the power of resilience and the importance of accountability. Don't leave without subscribing. It's your way of saying, keep the stories coming. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to connect with you. Until next time, stay inspired, and remember, every voice, every story, every moment matters. See you soon.